So, welcome to the Ranking Heroes, where we dive deep into the strategies that top the charts and explore the stories behind the minds that make it happen. So, I'm your host Neboisha, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Nenad, an expert in digital marketing, SEO, product development, and the UX. So, let's
Stop it,
get
I'm
started.
blushing.
Let's take it slow. So, first of all, Nana, thanks for coming. And
Pleasure
the
to be
first
here.
question for you is if you could share with us how your journey started in digital marketing and product development and what initially drove you to this field.
Well, I started doing this work out of spite more than a decade ago, around 15 years ago. There were some friends that were doing ghostwriting for an SEO expert from my hometown. And I was a kid, I needed the money, I wanted to have some cash on the side so I can go party or whatever. But the whole point is when I try to apply with my friends, hey, can I do some ghostwriting? Can I do some articles for you? They actually gave me like, yeah, man, you don't know English. I'm not sure if you're going to be a good ghostwriter. So I basically took one of my friends and told him, hey, I'm gonna work for free, like 4 or 5 articles, give me something to write, but I just want you to forward those articles to that guy who's an editor who told me that I don't know English. So
Oh.
one thing led to another. I started ghostwriting, and as time went by, I actually went a bit deeper to understand what I'm actually doing. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
blogosphere itself was a new thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Not that new. I mean, I was active on forums. I did read a lot of articles for whatever I needed, but I never truly understood what it was done for. So I started learning more about SEO and how does that go. I had some previous experience with CSS and HTML, so I started
Mm-hmm.
formatting and publishing articles on my own. It was sort of a time when WordPress just started kicking in like a popular platform like a CMS to actually publish articles. And again, one thing led to another. I started more researching on-site SEO. I started with link building, started to research on-site SEO. Again, I had previous skills with different programming languages. CSS and HTML are more of the markup languages.
Mm-hmm.
They're not specifically program languages. But I started doing PHP, I started doing JavaScript, and it kind of just clicked.
Oh.
So my journey as a whole, let's say that it took 2 or 3 years first off just studying SEO.
Mm-hmm.
Then I slowly moved to actual product development, to other marketing specializations. So I started doing social media as a way to boost SEO and content marketing. Then I started doing PPC once I started to experiment with pages that match search intent, etc. It was easier for me to just drive traffic and to see how the page works, how it converts. Then I started to dive more into analytics. Then I started working with designers, and finally I got into UX, where again, one thing led to another. I started doing and facilitating design sprints, started doing work with product development teams, and I worked on publishing and user acquisition for several apps so far. All of
Yeah.
them successful. One of them went IPO.
Oh, so there are a lot of things that you covered like over the past decade. So I suppose when you said it was the beginning of the WordPress, that's like 15 years ago.
Kind of. So, I mean,
Yeah.
before 2011, 2012, didn't have an actual SEO manager. At that point, we were all webmasters. So, you are
Mm-hmm.
the guy who is basically developing, designing a website, plus doing all on site optimization, plus you're running social media. So, you're basically a webmaster, an owner of a website doing all of that work. Specific specific job titles like SEO manager, SEO consultant, SEO specialist were just starting to appear because there were at 2011, it's kind of when SEO 2.0, let's call it, started, where a lot of spam was cut off from Google. Google became really large. They started doing work with NLPs, with voice search, etc. So at that point, there were too many things, and you needed to actually specialize for specific part of SEO. But before that, we were just webmasters.
Yeah, and when you said it took you 3 years to learn SEO, do you mean like was it easier to do SEO back like 10 years ago compared to now? In terms of competition, I know it was kind of easier, but in terms of some technicalities, was it easier to rank a website 10 years ago than it is now?
Well, to be honest, it was easier, but it required skill because there were a lot of things that are now, today, are considered black hat that were then in sort of a gray zone. So, and to be honest, Google works differently. Instead of, for instance, I'm going to explain an example. When we, back then, we wanted to apply for rich snippet results. But in order to apply for rich snippet results, your website needed structured data. At that point, the default structured data markup that was used was microdata, and microdata required you to actually change the HTML of the page so you can have some proper nesting for it in order to actually have a validated structure data markup.
Oh, so you didn't have the plugins that can easily help you do this?
No. This was this was needed to be done like directly in code. So regardless if it was WordPress or a static website or whatever, you needed to change the whole HTML template in order to apply it. However, because Google wanted to enable more websites to have that structured data, to use that structured data, and to apply for rich snippet results, they moved the whole formatting from microdata to JSON-LD. Now, JSON-LD is just a script that you place in the head section, and there are rules how you write it, and there are rules how you nest them, but again, there are a lot of generators for it, and you can just write your own JSON LD and put it in head. Now, you completely avoided changing the HTML of page. If you're not a developer, or if it was a complicated CMS, you need a developer's help for that. Now, when they moved to JSON LD, you didn't need it. And most of CMSs had already some plugins or generators where you could do it. So, Google is trying to enable people to do as less complicated things, or to do something like so little things to do, just to write content, just to publish your website, just to be true to it, and they will figure it out how to rank it. So back then you had some like proper input signals, like do this as an input and you receive this as an output. It required skill, it required more resources, and it was more on you to do that part of optimization. Now it's more about Google deciding itself and awarding itself without you even having to do any technical work or on-site work. Now, this is not I'm really explaining it in layman terms. There are still things that you can do that affect SEO, but there was a much bigger tool set of things that you could do like a decade ago than you could do now to actually influence search engine rankings, specifically for Google.
Yeah,
specifically for
I,
Google.
I actually wanted to ask you about the first major challenges you faced back then, but now can see that the one of the main challenges was like know how to program things, because you don't need a programmer now. You if you wanna do SEO, you can just do it using plugins. You don't need to code anything. So now it's much easier than it
True.
was before. And who were the biggest influences or mentors when you started out in your career? Like, how did they shape your approach to marketing and development?
I can name like really just two or three names. So one of them was
If you feel comfortable, yeah, please go.
um, Radomir Basta was a guy, an SEO consultant here from Serbia, who has an agency for dots where
Mm-hmm.
I worked at some point in Four Dots, but that guy was my idol like before all of that. So while I was just learning the
Mm-hmm.
job,
Yeah.
because um, as a person who's just starting out and who's just starting to learn SEO, you can Google like SEO guide or whatever, but you will get a ton of introductory or overall like articles that explain those parts.
Mm-hmm.
You actually start to learn SEO once you start to Google and to find specific questions and specific issues that you're covering. And Basta was a guy who really could explain you those parts, or from who you can ask and to explain specific question. Like when you ask him a question, he says, no, that wasn't the question you're asking. This was the question you're asking, and here is the answer. Because
Mm.
he would actually pinpoint what specific question could you ask and where to start learn from it. That is
Yeah.
Radomir Basta. Second guy, Gary Elias, he worked at Google. He was part of a web spam team, and I love that guy. So it was on my feed burner. So whenever thing got published, him and Barry Schwartz, because he explored Google patents. So those guys were like my primary source of what Google says and the way
Yeah.
it says it. And the third and most influential guy on my whole work and experience was Dan from Dan SEO,
Mm-hmm.
because that guy, uh, I learned from that guy how to properly test an assumption and how to
Mm-hmm.
never trust Google. I mean, never trust like something
Yeah.
like whenever Google says something, like you completely trust it immediately.
Yeah.
But I learned how to test all of those assumptions, whatever Google says, if it's true or if it's not, and to rely more on empirical evidence and data rather than just hearsay coming in from PRs. So
Yeah.
that guy was probably the most influential on my whole learning curve. But from that moment on, when I learned how to actually test assumptions, I'm not sure I ever like followed an influencer or an SEO
Mm-hmm.
expert. I mean, I accumulated enough knowledge and I cherry picked enough resources
Mm-hmm.
of information for SEO, so I learned to make an assumption myself for how to
Mm-hmm.
test it without having to go on and read stuff.
So basically, you learned what's working and what's not by actually testing it
Trial and
live on the
error, yeah,
websites.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not
So
just
that's the great.
saying, yeah, but you will find a lot of people, not specifically in SEO, but I know SEO is not a specific branch of marketing. However,
Yeah.
if we take as a digital marketing as an overall, whatever you see, like is it the advertising like PPC or is it content marketing or social media, people constantly explain A/B test, like we're going to A/B test this, we're going to A/B
Mm-hmm.
test that. They never did. I
Mm-hmm.
was actually doing and relying heavily on A/B tests, ABN tests, multivariate tests, and doing specific user testing on
Yeah.
spot when needed, whenever I wanted to test any kind of assumption.
So when it comes to testing, could you discuss one project that you remember and think that significantly impacted on your career? Like, and what were the key lessons you learned from that experience? Do you have a
Oh,
single project that really challenged you and made you like, completely change the way you're thinking and approaching to all the strategies that twisted your mind like?
uh, we had some of
There are many
those
projects, I
things.
know, but can you pick
There are
one
many
like?
projects. There are many projects, but there
Yeah.
was one that
Uh-huh.
really gave me where I really, really, truly experienced
Mhm.
like raising a conversion from around 4% to
Mhm.
5.5%, and that it made a difference on a website in terms of in terms of sales. Of we're talking six figures here. With that,
So like
just an increase of
1.5%
is
increasement.
around six figures. So, and I'm not lying. At that point, it was. But the whole uh, point of that test was it was a retail website that sold clothes, and
Oh.
we wanted to make sort of an algorithm where I'm saying sort of where we can with
Mm.
a few clicks we can conclude which brand do you I mean, and not clicks like do you like more Nike or Adidas, where you
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
click. No, just by using the website with 4 to 6 clicks we can get an idea and basically create a segment, a persona. This
Mhm.
guy likes Adidas, wears that number of shoes, likes this color, and
Oh.
so it's summer, so more of a polo shirt than the one with no polo. I'm not sure
Oh.
the name for it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
can do that with a few clicks. And that testing was on a website that had million of users, 1.2 million users a month.
A month, yeah.
So it was at any point of time you always had like between 60 and 100 users in the most active part of the day on that website.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the whole testing needed to be done. I mean, we did it on staging, but the whole testing
Mhm.
needed to be done directly there. And the data
Yeah.
that we accumulated data for a month in order to test those assumptions. And at one point, because we had a formula, and this was a mathematical formula that was checked with a psychologist,
Mm.
where we needed to do those testings with various colors and various buttons and whatever. And we actually had to bring in a professor of mathematics from a University of Belgrade to help us out, just to tweak the
Whoa, man.
formula, because the weighing of it was complicated for us to make. But if there was a point in time where I actually did a huge testing with a huge data set with something that didn't require for a user to engage in like a sort of a questionnaire, or just to see if they will click more on this button on a page, but to actually increase the chances of them buying the whole thing for themselves by knowing exactly what brands do they prefer, colors, etc., just to
Yeah.
shorten the process of their picks. That was that project.
It's
Now,
and serve them what they actually want and need.
exactly. I can
Bro,
say
that's
that
crazy.
it was a U.S. project. It was a U.S. website. It still exists today, but due to legalities, I can't share. I mean, I can share other tests, but if there
It's
was a
okay, yeah.
point in time where one huge project where a 1.5% made a six-figure difference at the end of the month, that's that. And we're talking
Bro, but
not.
like, yeah, but like going that deep without even knowing what will happen when you raise the conversion rate from
No,
4 to
we knew.
5.5.
We
You
knew
already
in
knew that.
terms of we already knew what
You
traffic is that
calculated what will
web had.
happen,
Yeah,
yeah.
so our goal was to increase it to 1.5%. No, our goal was to increase it for just 0.5%. but we went above and beyond to increase it to 1.5%.
I mean,
And
you
we
even
did
hired a professor who helped you,
yeah,
create the
because
formula. It's crazy. It's
we
incredible.
thought more out of the box. It was not just hey, can I
Yeah.
change this button, or can I change adding to cart like this step to short whatever.
Yeah.
We actually did it via, we optimized the discovery phase, not the sales process where you're actually purchasing. So we optimized the discovery phase, so people would be more engaged to finding exactly what they need.
Yeah.
And there was a mix of UX and SEO there, and a lot of analytics there. But that website was generating most of its traffic from organic. It was like 65 to 70% of traffic was from organic, because they did ads as well. I mean, it's a huge website. Working
Yeah,
with
man, that's
retailers.
incredible. I mean, thanks for sharing such interesting story. And yeah, regarding UX and digital marketing, these are areas that see rapid changes. So, how do you keep yourself updated and continue to innovate in your field?
UX never changes.
It
Marketing never
remains the same.
changes. No,
And
it never
what do you
changes.
mean by that?
The
Like,
whole, well,
people,
think of the
Google announce Google update and people go crazy. Obviously, they need that on SEO to make them
It's
calm.
bullshit.
But
It's bullshit.
and why do
Hear
you
me
think
out.
that?
Marketing at its core is to
Okay.
promote a product or a service that solves a user's problem or user's need at that point. So
Yeah.
if UX goes the same, so for instance, I have a bottle that I want to open and I need a corkscrew, so I'm going to buy a corkscrew. I'm not going to use a screwdriver for it or anything. I'm looking for a corkscrew because
Okay.
that's the solution for that problem.
That's the tool.
So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So when you're looking at marketing, you
Okay.
need to focus on the messaging and on the messaging where you are addressing a person, where you're proposing an issue to resolve their problem. So if you want to address a user, if it's a local business, you can just go out with flyers. You can also do digital marketing. You can also do PPC ads if it's a local business. If you're working on a scale where we're talking like a big city like New York, you can go with billboards, you can go with social media, you can go with whatever. But the whole point is your message needs to be sent across, and your goals as a business needs to be met, and the problem for a user needs to be solved. It's just all of the tools that you are using. So let's say I'm going social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, or whatever. Those are all just tools. But at the core of marketing is the messaging that you're sharing, and that messaging needs to be consistent over all other channels, over all other media that you're using. So
For example, if we take Coca-Cola as an example, their brand message stayed the same for over 100 years.
Exactly.
Now.
Coca-Cola is red in all countries. Okay, they have that one green one, but that's like a thing. But
what about, okay, that's the core, but what about the other things? For example, they have some promotions, like you buy colas and you then, I don't know, you can just scan the QR codes and then get a gift or...
It's a tool. But the marketing messaging behind Coca-Cola is that when you are thirsty, you grab a Coke, right? You do that because you have a problem, you're thirsty. Now hear me out. Does soda actually help you with your thirst? No, only water helps.
Actually, no, yes.
But you have that messaging in mind that's promoted on any kind of marketing channel that you can see. But the messaging is, it's hot outside, grab a Coke, right?
Yeah, right.
So the same goes with Now, when it comes to UX, UX was done like, if you can see it through ages if you want. So imagine an engineer working at a factory and he's just standing there looking at a factory worker working on a machine, and he's looking at him for an hour. And he see that while he's pulling that lever, he's hitting his elbow on some part, and he does that like 3 times in 1,000 lever pulls. He's going to consider and to think, how can he do that because the factory worker won't hit himself and the process can be improved, his health can be improved, etc., etc. So the UX at its core is you are doing work, you are solving a problem. Some problem was, so you need to have it, you need to access it and to solve it as easy as you can. So you can apply UX to a traditional product, to a physical product. You can apply UX to a digital product, whatever. But if you look at its core, those are just methods, and everything that you see today, let's go, social media, paid advertising, PPC advertising, SEO, or to go with UX, you can do with improving processes, like implementing processes. For instance, Toyota, they implemented their whole methodology, etc., in how to have as least churn and to improve the whole building of a car, etc. Those are all methods, and those methods at their core rarely change. There are different flavors of methods when it comes to marketing, like frameworks that you can use. The same goes for UX, but at its core, the whole goal is get my message across and ease the process as much for a person to resolve its problem, either by using my product, hiring my services, subscribing to my newsletter, whatever the goal is.
Yeah. So the key is like the core is always the same, but the product can be upgraded,
exactly,
developed even further. But
those are all just tools.
The core remains the same.
Yeah, those are all just tools. Search engine optimization is the same. If you look at it, so from a UX perspective, take a look at the first page of Google. So you might have a flashy website with 5 pages that has storytelling, etc. I might have a corporate website with 200 pages. A friend of mine can have an e-commerce website with 100,000 products. If we look at from a pure perspective, like how many pages do each one of us has? If we look at from a perspective, the page speed of all of those websites, the storytelling one might be flashy, has a lot of JavaScript, etc. If you look at from that perspective, website to website, they're all different. They have all different strengths, different problems, different scales. But when it comes to Google resolves that with their SERP snippets. You have a blue one that's title, green one that's URL, and the gray one that's meta description. So regardless how big or small you are, all the results look the same at the first page, and it's on Google to decide which of those will be the first, which one will be above the other or whatever. But when it's your initial contact with that search, you have all of those websites are the same. So from a UX perspective, nothing is picking up your attention outside of defined parameters that are those 10 on a single page. I mean, I know that Google has now infinite scrolling. It's not just 10 results, but again, you get the point.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, your brain waves are going faster than a Formula One.
Do interrupt me.
No, I love it. I think people will love it as well. So I wanted to ask you another question because I know how good you are with analytics. So how has advanced analytics transformed the way you make decisions in marketing?
Oh, a lot since day one. I mean, before that, before let's say before the whole GDPR
Mm-hmm.
came in,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I mean, I was always careful with what the data I'm actually picking up and what data am I using to pick up. I
Mm-hmm.
never actually picked up, for instance, personal information about a user. Like I know that this was Nebojša Jankovic that visited my website. I
Mm-hmm.
never did
Mm-hmm.
that. But before that, so let's say 2011, 2012, so let's take that number. So you had the GA, it wasn't still Universal Analytics, it was different at that point, if I recall.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to match a user, now I didn't need to know a specific username, but I could look at the segment. Like this is a user group that has the same interests, same behavior, same demography, so 100 or so people.
Mm-hmm.
But for instance, I wanted to learn more about omnichannel marketing.
Mm-hmm.
For
Mm-hmm.
instance, a person visits my website and
Mm-hmm.
he sees my app.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, he visited from his mobile phone. So he left, he came back home, he Googled it from his PC, and couldn't find it because he forgot the brand name, he misspelled it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But he was on Facebook and he saw an ad like, hey, remarketing ad or whatever. So he came
Mm-hmm.
back from that ad to my website from his PC, from a completely different device, from a completely different location,
Mm-hmm.
and he left it as is. He just read through. Day after, he used his phone, but he Googled brand name, so now he Googled brand name and went to the Play Store and downloaded the app. He used the app, left the app. A few months passed and he remembered it again, but he only remembered the brand name. He again Googled that just to see if that is, then went back and installed it. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at it that way, he used Google, he used Facebook, he used Google Ads, he used his phone,
Mm-hmm.
etc. But when you look at in analytics, it was all a different session. It was all a different user. So from your perspective, you had four different bounces. Like he came in from Google bounced. He came in
Mm-hmm.
from his home from Google bounced. He came from Facebook, he bounced. But and he downloaded it from phone. Now you're seeing four different users doing four
Mm-hmm.
different sessions, but you couldn't connect it like this was a user, this
Yeah.
was his journey. He took like this time before installing and uninstalling an app. Now, at
Yeah.
that point, in order for you to do that form of tracking, you needed to do deep linking with a lot of UTM parameters, etc.,
To connect the dots, yeah.
yeah, and you needed to apply specific variables like specific IDs to tie in that user to
Mm-hmm.
a specific user group. It was really complicated.
And did
But
that also like hurt your capacities? I don't know how to say it, but like, does that complicate things
it's
when you have all the URLs and everything?
extremely complicated things
Yeah.
because it's really difficult to scale because you needed to
Mm-hmm.
have like JavaScript libraries with random
Oh,
number
yeah.
generators for IDs, etc. It was really difficult
Got
to
it,
do
yeah.
it that way, but it wasn't fully necessary. It was on some bigger scale projects where
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
was, as you explained, the one where a 0.5% increase can mean six figures. So in revenue, so that's like a big thing. However, you have Universal Analytics now, and you have GA4 now, which
Yes.
doesn't tie you to a session ID, but to a
Mm-hmm.
user ID. It gives a user that specific indicator that tracks him from whatever channel at any point from whatever device he uses visits that website. So you can track its full journey and track that omnichannel how is one channel assisting the other one. For instance, you could go and visit a social media page and see some
Okay.
brand, and you go to Google and Google that brand name and land on the website and buy a product. Now,
Okay.
if we look at from a channel perspective, it was the social media one that initiated the buying. It was the social media one that initiated the conversion, and you should probably give in more to social media,
Oh.
invest more in social media. But when you look at from a Google Analytics perspective, I mean, if you don't have that specific tracking or you're
Yeah.
not looking for
You
that
think
specific
that they
data,
Google searched your brand?
yeah, and that they Google
Yeah.
search the brand name in your head, it's that organic traffic is the
Yes.
thing that you should focus on, and that you should build more, let's say, links for brand terms and dedicate pages for brand terms, but it's not. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
that form of tracking, that form of assumption testing was difficult before to do, and it's much easier to do now with those tools, specifically after GDPR, specifically after Google enabled Google Signals, etc., where they can hide your IP, they can hide your location, they can hide any personal identifiable information about you, but still give you enough data and enough, form those segments to explain what exactly, where people find about you, how they find about you, and how are other channels affecting it, so you can properly distribute your marketing budgets accordingly.
Yeah.
Again,
I mean
I know
that's
that I'm explaining it like in broad terms, but this
no,
is
no worries.
specifically
I
for,
get it. I totally understand what you want to say, and I think
because
that
this was
people
not
who
tied just
don't
for
do this, they make mistakes.
this is not just tied to Google Analytics. The whole point of when
Yeah.
GDPR first got introduced, where they told like people, you cannot force a cookie to remember some data about that person without they actually accepting it.
Allowing it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't the point if all the websites are going to actually enforce that on their own. Like a small website doesn't have any clue about it. A
Yes,
person who
exactly.
is having a bakery doesn't have any idea of GDPR. Maybe his
Yeah.
son made him a website or whatever. But the whole point is that big companies that track data, like Google Analytics, Mixpanel, etc., needed to, they were forced to change those, and they needed to change their inner workings of how that data and how that user is tracked. So once those tools changed, a lot of it changed, and a lot of it got easier, but you still needed skill in terms of, here's my advice: don't ever open analytics or look into analytics without writing down a question that you need answer to. If you just open analytics to browse it, it's a mistake. So, and this is why all of the people that actually use analytics have issue with analytics, why they think it's difficult. Don't ever open it without writing a question. When you write a question, you can find specific parameters, you can even find guides where to find or how to measure specific thing, but don't open analytics just for the sake of it. It's an error, it's a mistake, and you'll never learn it properly.
Like writing down the questions and then figuring out which events
where to find the answer, and what do you need in order to find that answer. Do I need people visiting this? How much did we earn from our website from Google this month? Okay, I'm looking for organic traffic, e-commerce purchases, purchases that covered, etc., etc. I'm ditching whatever. So I'm merging if someone landed on a specific variant page where they have a URL parameter or whatever. So there is, before you write down the question, don't ever look into analytics, because you're going to have a lot of false positives.
That's a good advice. I mean, I can now see the bigger picture, and I can clearly see how has your role evolved from when you started to where you are now as a co-founder, as a CMO and CEO and whatnot. I mean,
Stop, I'm blushing.
so yeah. So the thing, another question that I have is like, what is the biggest change that you've seen in the SEO industry over the last decade?
Uh, Introduction of Hummingbird update. It was somewhere back in 2013. It
Mm-hmm.
was, I mean, um, or when they started to introduce voice search, but that was around 2008.
So
I
these
think the
two, the
Hummingbird
hummingbird and the voice search update.
voice search was the thing that actually enabled Hummingbird Update. Hummingbird Update was a semantical upgrade where they
Mm-hmm.
actually ran through your content and used NLP, natural language processing, to actually learn
Mm-hmm.
the context behind your content.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Before that, we had to use microdata and
Mm-hmm.
proper HTML5 markup to inform. For instance, when you create a page, you have proper HTML5 semantic markup that you need to use. So header is header, nav is navigation, a sidebar is some
Mm-hmm.
related links. Aside is a block where you probably stuff something that doesn't have anything to do with the website, for instance, an
Mm-hmm.
AdSense block or a banner or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
main is part where you have content of that page.
Mm-hmm.
With the microdata, you could differentiate between a page and an article by
Mm-hmm.
adding segments in the code itself, like informing
Oh.
this is the article title, this is the headline, or this is
Mm-hmm.
the title of the page and this is the content of the page. When Hummingbird was
Mm-hmm.
introduced, uh, that context, figuring out that context,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't relying on microdata and that structured data that you were given, but
Mm-hmm.
it was relying on the content itself to find the
Mm-hmm.
context behind it. It
Oh.
was greatly pushed by NLP development, by natural language processing development, and the thing that pushed NLP development was voice search,
Mm-hmm.
because people who actually used voice search are not doing the same prompts. When you Google search, for instance, hairdresser in Novi Sad, you're going to
Yeah.
Google hairdresser Novi Sad, right? That's what you're going
Yes.
to type.
Yes.
But when you do voice search, you're going to ask where is the nearest hairdresser.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
right. Yeah.
actually compose the question, a semantical question behind it.
Yes.
Voice search was what employed natural language processing to work better. And
Mm-hmm.
with all of that, Hummingbird was introduced somewhere 2013, 2014, where it
Mm-hmm.
started to get the context from the content without relying on specific technical things that you did in that
Mm-hmm.
content to inform
Mm-hmm.
about the context. So that was probably the most impactful, if you ask me. If you ask someone older who was doing like 5 or 6 years, like somewhere between 2005 and 2010, then it was the Penguin update when they did a lot of cleaning of link
Mm-hmm.
spam,
Mm-hmm.
where, for instance, they removed the meta keywords tag, where they introduced keyword
Mm-hmm.
stuffing, etc., link spam using page score, etc. That was like a big hit.
Mm-hmm.
But from my perspective, compared to what I know now, Hummingbird was the most influential one. It
Oh,
really
okay.
did
Okay.
like a really big impact on the industry.
I bet a lot of SEOs would agree with you on this.
I'm not sure on that part, because I'm
The
really
old
not sure
ones, like
about
the old school ones
again, I
that
think I'm
really
somewhere in the middle behind
experienced
that,
it.
because when you look at the fresher
Mm-hmm.
SEO experts that are coming in, they will always use that mantra like content is king, and
Yeah. I heard
I
about that.
really it's not about that mantra is wrong, but they are abusing it and they are not understanding the what that mantra should present. So here is the reason what I explained with Hummingbird, with context behind the content, with value behind the content, with authorship, with expertise, with experience, etc. But they just see it as write as much content, add as long as content as you need, because that's going to help SEO. Hear me out from a UX perspective. And search engines are all about UX because they want to serve you valuable, important information relevant to you in the most easiest understandable way. So those 10 results, blue, green, and gray for explaining them. But if you write an article that's 3,500 words long, nobody's going to read that. Not on mobile. I mean, not that they won't. They will read through it if a specific piece of information they need is somewhere in that content. But for people who are looking for specific answers, usually you can do that in 200 to 300 words of data. Like, for instance,
like, just give me what I want and I can
open any product page for on an e-commerce. Did you ever need to read through a specific product description? If you wanted a review of that product, you're going to read the review for that specific
when I see
product.
I know if it's good for me or not.
Exactly. So they are abusing that content is king mantra because they see it from a different perspective. Like, write as much content that's clear to read, easy to use, blah blah blah. It's not like that. So if I'm telling now Hummingbird update was a big one, it was that time when content is king mantra was introduced, and it was at that time that many new SEOs, let's say, started with SEO 2.0, where you saw a lot of people who actually were more of content writers than actual SEO consultants.
Okay, we have 10 more minutes and I want to ask you a few more questions. So I really like the way you're approaching to different problems. I see that you like to step out and see the bigger picture from the outside. So what personal philosophy guides your work in digital marketing, product development, SEO? And what advice would you give to young professionals who are just starting out?
I'm not sure I'm really not sure how to answer that question.
I see like you're mixing psychology, programming. I mean, there are a lot of different areas that you're covering that a person cannot learn to do in a 5 years, 10 years. You need a lot time to actually learn how to do it and approach it. But I like how creative your approach is, and so like, do you have any personal philosophy behind it?
I'm probably going to use the one that's used for so I'm not sure if it's more applicable to software development. There's an agile software development manifesto. It's a thing. So I'm just going to read through this. So individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working tools, working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiations, and responding to change over following a plan. So it's really applicable to everything I do here, because I'm always going to I cannot give you a specific learning curve to learn all of this. It's important to work with a lot of individuals and to have a lot of interactions with different people doing work from different spheres. So, for instance, if you have a designer preparing a design for a website, and you have a content writer writing content for that website, and you have a developer developing that page, if they all work in isolation, a designer will make a design and will fill it with lorem ipsum. You will come in as a content writer,
Yeah.
you will write content that's going to be longer than what was intended with lorem ipsum, it will disfigure the design. Once the design is done, the developer will try to replicate it, but the developer only did the static design. He never thought about animations. So like how fast should these animations be? And in most often front-end developers will add the animations, but they are looking the website like really slow when they're scrolling, they're trying to find things, and the animations are slower than the user actually scrolls. So individuals and interactions between those individuals are really, really important in all of it to have that proper learning curve. If you're a person who's starting to do SEO, yes, you will read a lot. Yes, you will explore a lot. But it's really important that you actually work on with developers and designers on building a page, a specific page, just to see how the process works, to get insight from them on how users should interact and are interacting with the website. You should learn analytics. You should never start working or doing any marketing without at least understanding basic channel grouping and basic page and event tracking for anything. So doing marketing without getting any data behind it, like if this works, you're not gonna do it. So for a marketer starting out, I would advise HubSpot because they have that whole inbound methodology in place with user personas, etc., with SMART goals, which is a good thing to start. I would again never do anything without jumping. So learn the method, then learn the analytics, then learn how to test it. Talk with people, use working and existing tools that are already on the market. Don't cherry pick and find something that's new, trendy, or whatever. Now it's a highlight. For instance, I rarely use ChatGPT. I rarely use it. I mean, because much of the things can be done without using any GPT in my line of work. But work with people, interact with people from other branches as well. Be open to them, be skeptical of their opinions, learn how to test your assumptions, never open analytics before you know the question you are asking, and test. That's the whole mantra behind it, learning curve that you should have. For an SEO starting out, first, understand what is inbound, understand how inbound methodology, what it is, and how content marketing works from a user perspective and a business perspective. Go with HubSpot if you're a beginner. Explore other options and other academia once you pass those introductions. So yeah, that's about it.
I think that was very helpful. Thanks for coming with such a detailed answer and providing the feedback. So guys, you heard Nenad. If you have any questions about the tools, about the strategies, or the articles you need to read, feel free to leave comments.
Yeah, here's your first task as an SEO. Here's your first task in SEO. I'm a marketer and I don't have any social media. Find me. Find me and ask me a question. If you can manage that, then we can do some work. Then you can start working.
So thank you for tuning in to the Ranking Heroes. Special thanks and a big shout out to you, Nenad, for joining us today and sharing such invaluable insights. If you enjoyed our conversation and want to learn more, make sure to subscribe to our channel, follow us on our social media platforms, and we'll be back with more stories and strategies that will help you climb the ranks in your industry. Until next time, keep striving for the excellence, and remember, every hero needs a team. So goodbye.
Bye.